In terms of the second semester, so that will be your spring semester again, starting January, end of January up to May. You also have again 5 modules, and one of those modules is knowledge and information management in project environments. So in that one, you're basically looking at how to manage project knowledge in projects, especially as project as temporary organizations, that get disbanded after they're done, and then there's a loss of that knowledge where people live with it, or people work on a project for years but then they leave the organization and now all of that information is lost. So those are the kind of things that you look at. You look at the learning and the unlearning in project environments. How do you manage knowledge? How do you gain knowledge? How do you retain knowledge within a project? How do you capture all the information and the knowledge such that it can be used for future use? How do you use storytelling, for example, for sharing information and sharing knowledge with maybe new people that are coming into the organization? How do you use lessons learned, from the previous project to make sure you don't make the same mistakes that are going to cost money and time in the new projects? So those are kind of things that basically that go into knowledge management, especially in like I'm saying, in project as temporary organizations. And right now we're also working in virtual teams. How do you capture that knowledge? And that's just, you look at on both people side as well as technology side. So in terms of technology side, what kind of technology systems do you use? Basically, do you meant to manage your project knowledge? Do you have databases? Do you have central SharePoint where all of the information is located there? Who has access to it? Do you make sure it keeps getting updated? All this kind of things. So that'll be on the technology side of things. And on the people side as well, what we do in the course is basically to say, how do you get, because research actually shows that a whole lot of knowledge resides within people. That's what you call tacit knowledge. So how do you get that tacit knowledge out? How do you get it and distribute it across the organization and across the project? So those are some of the things that we learn. And you basically want to learn also, why do people not share project? What barriers, what enablers can you do as a project manager, or as an organization, to basically inspire your people to share more knowledge? So those are some of the things that we basically look at: the enablers and the barriers. What stops people from sharing? Maybe people feel like, is it power? Is it maybe they feel like they're not going to be of value anymore if they share their knowledge, so they want to keep it for job security as well. So those are some of the things that you look at. I did my research in this field actually. So it's a very interesting topic. Again, it's another angle of project management that you might not actually consider. So that's one of the other modules that we do. And then the other one is decision analysis and judgment in projects. So here basically we look at we look at decision making in projects, or in general in life. So you look at individual decision making. How do people make decisions? What models do we use? It could be mental models. What models do we use to make decisions? And how do we make those decisions? And obviously, as people, we have biases as well. So we look at the human cognitive biases as well that may affect our judgments and decision making in projects. So now, how do we address this? Could be made by involving more people and having a decision making, but also what are the positives and negatives of group decision making? Might take some time, might be slow, there's no accountability, all of those kind of things. So you look at the biases at a high level and in deep as well, and what can you use in terms of technology and people as well. How do you address these biases? At least if you are aware of them, then you can address them. So those are the kind of things that we look at in decision analysis. And then we also touch base basically on SQL and building and searching in databases. It's just an introduction course into it. And then you do a few exercises. Then you also basically learn on how to make decisions under certainty, and how do you go about that, and also how to make decisions under risks. There's certain formulas that you use for that, to say, okay, well, this is a decision under risk, this is a decision under uncertainty, so therefore this is how you should approach it, this is the model that you should use. One of the most very interesting courses, and very practical as well, because we all have our own human biases. So we make sure we address those in decision making in projects as well. So that's another module. And the other one is commercial management of projects. As the word says, it's all about the commercial management and the financial side of projects. But it's not just about looking at money. It's not just saying, okay, this is how much we have, this is how much the project needs. It's basically looking at the value of the money for the project, how the financing model of the project, how is the project financed, who are the stakeholders that are financing this project, and how are they going to get value out of this project. It's basically also stakeholders. And how does the project generate money? And when it generates money, what are the outgoing expenses out of this project to basically satisfy all the stakeholders? And you look at, like I'm saying, financing models. There's different types of financing models that you look at. You also look at the IFs, the international framework, IFC framework, basically for assessing the development impact of the projects. That's also what you look at in this course. So basically, even though a project is generating money, but how do you assess the development impact on the community as well, and all the surrounding, or for all the people that are involved in the project? So you look at those. You look at the Equator Principles of 2020. You look at all of these things basically to assess the development of the project, and to make sure that it's financed properly. And how does the project generate value? You look at the rate of returns. What are the payback periods for this project, and how you're going to generate money from this project? How long is it going to take? And all of those things. So that's also one of the cool modules to really do, and you get a whole big case study on that you have to do, and a whole analysis on it. And so those the framework, the IFC framework, is very important. It talks about employees, the rest of the society, the stakeholders, the investors, and all of that. You can see the picture on the site here that shows what to look for when you're assessing the sustainability development of a project. Because you don't want to just do a project for financial gain, but it also has to be developmental gain as well for the rest of the society. And then second but not least, is international project management. So that's what it is, international project management. How do you manage project on an international scale as a project manager? What skills do you need? And especially now with COVID, you want to also look at how do you manage teams? How do you manage projects with your teams being in different parts of the world, in different time zones, and different types of countries. But more so, that's also interesting, is you look at the cultural dimensions of projects. How do you make yourself aware of those projects, cultural differences, and how do you manage them to make sure they don't clash and therefore delaying the project? And in that, we look at models like Hofstede's cultural dimensions framework model that basically shows you what kind of cultural differences can you expect from certain countries, because the way that we do things in South Africa might not be the same way that we approach things in Ireland. So there'll always be those cultural differences, and Hofstede's model clearly gives you an idea of where does each country lie on his scale. You have individualism and communism and all of those things. How do they approach things? So that way, when you're working in an international team that is diverse and with people from across the world, you know how to approach it. If you know that you're going to talk to an Italian person based on Hofstede's model, you know how they usually are. German people operate like this. A European company might not function the same way as a South African company. Things like that. So that's quite interesting as well, that you look in international project management, and then how do you manage teams virtually from far as well, with different types of people. So that's also one of the interesting modules that you'll get to do. And then the last one is project leadership and governance. So basically, there you do a certain aspect on leadership. What is leadership? But leadership is a very popular topic that is discussed in all courses, so I'm not going to touch much on that. But we also look at the governance. We look at organizational governance as well as project governance. That's what we're most interested in. How do you go about, developing a governance framework for projects in order to make sure that there's effective processes that go in the project in terms of decision making and accountability and stakeholders and all of that. So you look at all of those things. What are some of the government's principles? What are some of the government's frameworks aspect that you need to consider? And how do you develop a governance framework for a project? What are the benefits of that? Why is it critical? How can governance affect a project to fail? Or how can it make it more effective and more successful? So we look at all of those things as well, and that is the last module that you do in the second. Before the summer semester begins, you will kind of have a simulation. You'll just project management simulation where you're divided into groups, and you're basically going to be given a project, like a business kind of, and then you have to make certain financial decisions, and you kind of bringing all your skills that you've learned throughout the year into this, so that they can see that you've learned all of these things. How do you resource allocation? Investment, getting the value for money for shareholders. How much do you allocate? So there's a whole simulation software that you're going to get, and you're going to do a whole simulation on that as part of your group, and then you present it, and then the winning team, then there'll be the winning teams, 1, 2 team at the top.
Thank you, Achan. Okay, so I'll be taking you through the performance of the company, throughout the early years and the later years right now as it stands, and to basically see that all the lessons that we've learned in the strategy that Rachan has outlined, how much it has helped us to benefit in terms of performance in finance, overheads, and job progression, client relationship as well. So as you can see from here, when we took over the company from in period 4, it had a forward workload of 19 million and a forward margin of only 699,000. And at the time, the company was only utilizing 75% of the capital base. So when we took over, we aimed to increase those KPIs along with others, but for now we'll just focus on the ones that are circled in red because those are the key KPIs. So as it stands right now at the end of period 15, we have managed to increase our forward workload to 32 million, our company value to 22%, and our forward margin has obviously been going up and down. As it stands right now, we didn't get a lot of projects in the previous period, so it was a little bit low. But otherwise, we have also managed to increase our capital base utilization to 83. It has also been fluctuating through the different periods, going up and down. We've managed to take it up to 95 and 98% in other periods as well, based on the amount of jobs that we get. And then in terms of overheads, when we took over the company, it was only occupying 11% of the overall market. And we first started with the strategy to say we want to double that, or at least double it in every period where possible, or at the end of the later years. And we have right now managed to increase it to 22% because we're focusing on only 3 specific sectors, which is the energy, transport, and building and commercial as well. But we're hoping that with the decisions that we are making now, we will increase that to at least 25 or 27% in future. And then in terms of procurement, we've bid for quite a lot of jobs, 54 of them, and we've managed to win 23 of them, with that is 43% success rate. And as Rachana highlighted, when we started, our markup in the early years was on average 4.1%. But as you can see right now, as it stands in the later years, it's 3.5% on average. So because we went low to make sure we submit competitive bids, and we've lost a few jobs as well, like 31. But what made us happy as a team was that we know that we lost it due to 42% of that was lost due to the client relationship, which my colleague will go into the lessons learned as to how that happened in the next slide. And then in terms of job progression, we are happy that we only lost 2 project managers due to bonuses, and we learned from that, and we made sure that never happened in the later years. And then all our jobs have completed on time and early as well. We had no job that was completed late. So we are quite happy with that. And then that made sure we're building proper relationship with clients. As we'll see in the next slide, we've managed to increase our client list from when we took over, it was around 32 clients, and we've managed to increase that to almost 54, 52. And we have no poor relationship with any of our clients right now. We are quite satisfied with that. And as you can see on the bottom right there, we have 4 relationships that are fairly good, 2 that are good, and 2 that are really good, and 1 that is extremely good. So we are proud of the relationship that we have, and we hope to build more on that to grow our company.
Okay, so then what is left lastly, it's your thesis, and then which is your dissertation. So there you get to basically you do this in your summer semester. You get to have whether you can either do an in-company research, or you can do a theoretical paper where you basically just do a review. You have those 2 options. Some of us wanted to do an in-company research, but we couldn't because of COVID. So we had to settle for a theoretical paper. Now it differs in weights, it also differs in structure, but they give you a template for that. So you're pretty much given assistance on that. If you want to do an in-company, then you have to request your company, and you will do an empirical paper. We will basically have to gather evidence, do interviews, and do surveys and all of that. And then a research paper is basically doing a review, reviewing the other papers, critically analyzing them, and then summarizing and where is the gap in the field and where are some good for recommendations for opportunities. Now, what I did not like is that the university or the department basically of Project and Center for Project Management did not support us as students. There was a lot of autonomous learning, which we know that we've been doing that for the rest of the year, but there was no support from our supervisors. There was no support from our course directors. Some of us did not even have contact with our supervisors. We only had contact with them once, and that was it. And then we were expected to do everything on our own, even though we were not sure exactly what needed to be, delivered. So it was quite a hard thing. So I expect that from the university. There's very little minimal supervision and minimal help from the supervisors. That's something that the university needs to work on as well. But yeah, so you have May, June, July, August to submit your thesis. And in that time, you submit it to supervisor once for a review, and then that's it. So that makes it very difficult, to know if you're heading in the right direction or not. But yeah, and then you submit your thesis end of August, and then you are done with your master's. So that basically is a bit of my review on the course. Overall, I think it's a good course. I think it's very relevant to the industry with the modules that I've covered as well. These are things that personally for me, they've helped me, land a job from the skills that I've learned. But I do feel like there's also room for improvement of the things that I was not really personally happy about from the course. So overall, if you want to do the master's, I would highly recommend you come and do it, but just be prepared for autonomous learning. Like there'll be a lot of learning and there'll be a lot of group work as well. So be prepared for that. So overall, it's a good course, and do it. And it's relevant in every department. You can do project management in every discipline. You do project management literally probably in your life. So if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. I hope this helps you guys. Sorry if the video is a bit too long. I just got carried away, but I hope this helps you with your decision if you want to get into project management, and just to get an idea of what kind of courses, what kind of content the university offers. And if you have any questions, let me know. Get me in touch with me on my social media. Like the video, hit the comments, and let me know what you think. Thank you. See you in the next video.